G'day and welcome back to my workbench, and look at the junk. Isn't she looking mighty? Everything is finally finished on her. All the rigging is in place. Right? She's fully rigged. She's fully pimped. Everything's been done. And I will do most of that in this video. Yes, I'm afraid there was so much footage. There was so much rigging. There were so many knots. It has taken me 2 weekends to get it all done, and that just takes time. So I hope you'll enjoy this one. We get most of it done. We really get a good sort of start on it, but it will continue on next week. So this is part A of how I do the rigging on the junk. And look, it certainly is pretty, isn't it? So I hope you look forward to that, and I hope you'll enjoy this video. So let's get on with it. Roll the music. This is pretty much where I left the junk last time. The only difference is I only had the bamboo strung on that side, on the port side before. I've now added the bamboo to the starboard side, and I've put on my traditional little loops. So I rather like those little loops of cordage. So yeah, I've got a nice pretty blue background to play with today, which is going to make it a lot easier for you to see the rigging. So that's where we're at. We're going to be looking at rigging the sails. Remember these lovely red sails? Yep. So they're all ready to be rigged. Now, I had already transferred my rigging cordage to an old IMAI reel that I had. In fact, you can see there's different colour cordage on there. That's because it comes in a big loopy thing, and it's fine. It's a loose loop when it comes off, but it's soon tangled. So that's half of it that I've still got to untangle, but it's a lot easier for me to work if I've got it on the reel. And these reels have little doodads on the side where you can pull the thread and lock it while you put it away so it doesn't tangle again. Yes, yeah. So we've got to do that. Now, I've thought long and hard about this, and I'm going to pretty well go out of the box. This is kind of the rig that you would put on it. It's sort of from my research, and it's quite complex, and there's lots of bits of string that hang off each of these sort of bamboo arms on this thing. And you could do that, and that would be really good, but I probably need a couple more weeks of videoing to figure all that out. So instead, I'm going to go with a kit supplied rigging arrangement. And it's not bad, it's close. And in fact, it's not inaccurate, it's just less. So for models, often you put less on just because, you know, too much string can look kind of messy. But I could always come back and do the additional rigging another day if I got really carried away and felt like doing it. So we'll follow that through. You've seen me rig other ships. There's lots of stays and lots of things, and the shrouds and all the rest of it. Not really much of that here. The only stays we've got, and these are quite optional in the other kind of rigging, though quite often there are no stays at all. There's probably just a forward stay. That's about it. And that's, you know, that's left there so the sail can rotate all the way around. But their rig shows 2 backstays on each of the masts, and that's probably just for stability for the model. And it's probably not an inaccurate rig for this junk, which is of the later period, right? So it's late 19th century, so the rigs could be a bit more Portuguese because there's a lot of influence and a change. For instance, you know, having the front part here of the keel and the way it is, it's very different to traditional junks. They often just come down completely round from the bow, right? Very much like a barge. So this is the thing. Things change over time. They're not exact, especially a ship like this that's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. It evolved over time. So this rig we'll go with because we got the book, it fits the model, and it should be relatively easy to do. Now, the only thing else that I added is, let's see if I can get this off without wrecking things. You've got to look in the instructions, but just about at the end, there's this part, which I found sitting there and wondered what it was. I thought it was an extra bit. That's for the flags. That's the flagstaff. And it sits atop the main mast. All right. So they sort of say, leave it right to the end and everything. And I thought, well, you probably do that if you think you're going to knock it off. But really, you wouldn't. And anyhow, you wouldn't be putting your flags on to ensure that was really glued in place. So I have put that on there now. I've glued that on there, left it to solidly set so that by the time I get there with my flags, in the whole area, yeah, if I had a couple of hairs, I'd probably find it. Let's have a look at this and start rigging stays. Now, one thing is, this is jute coloured, right? Which is all the running rigging. Predominantly, junks are pretty well all running rigging. They can be done entirely with running rigging by the looks of it. But stays, that lock in place are tarred lines. So they will usually be a darker colour black. So I'm going to dig into my spare sort of string bin and pull out some darker colour, and I'm going to run all the stays on the mast first. I've made a start and I've got the first stay line in over here. It's only fixed at the bottom. I'll still loose at the top so I can tighten as I go, because you always do things in pairs. So I'm going to do the second stay line, which comes from the second little belay pin there, and it goes up to a notch, not at the top, sort of a little bit down. It's clearly shown on the diagram. So I'm going to need a length of cotton, probably double it just to be sure, and you've got more than you'll ever need. Right, and this is some nice brown, dark brown cotton I found. Cordage, which is just a little bit thicker than the jute coloured stuff. Right, now what we need is at the end, it won't just end, right? It'll tie at both ends, but also down the bottom here where the belay pin is, there'll always be a loop of rope. Now in this case, it'll be a figure of 8 loop. So how do you make a figure of 8 loop? Well, that's pretty easy, really. And once my glue is dry, I can cut in nice and close, trim off that excess. That should hold nicely in place. And they aren't super tight, right? They have got a little bit in them. The reason being is you've got a forestay still to go in, right? And that's going to, or a mainstay if you want to call it, but it's a forward facing stay, and that may put a little bit of tension on and tighten those up. So you don't want them too tight, otherwise if you rig everything too tight, you put on something and everything will start ripping and tearing bits off the kit, or it'll just all snap, you know. So firm is what you want, right? But allowing the fact that things are going to pull against each other. All right, so that is attached nicely there, and if I can get this up without banging on the lights, you might be able to see there's a little coil of rope there and that side. Once you've got quite a few of them and they've all got little coils of rope, it looks so much better than just the cordage coming down and tying off with a knot on the belay pin, right? There's all these little coils of ropes, one beside each other, just like when I did this. The fact that you've got the two there, they start to look really good. All right, I'll get on with this and get all these little backstays put in place. The instructions are fairly clear on where all little pulleys go, right, your blocks. And they even give you the lengths as to how long the cordage should be, which is rather nice. But personally, I don't do that. I don't add the cordage yet, right, to either the blocks or tie it off on there until I know how long things are. And it depends on the rig I'm going to use. Depending how I've got the sails position, whether, you know, basically they're, you know, with the wind, or I'm basically tacking against the wind, or whatever I choose to do could alter the length a little bit. So I'm always a bit dubious about that, but they're probably okay. But I'll show you how I measure it off on the model. But they give you each one of these, showing you exactly how to rig them up, and they're all pretty well the same. So each corner has a block which hangs off it, which allows to run through to lifts and pull back to clue lines, and then down the bottom here a little pull into sheets, sort of. That's what I would call them. I don't know what they call them, but they sort of operate a little bit like that, if you know what they are. Now the blocks are all on the sprue, and I've already painted mine black just because I wanted to. You can probably leave them wood or whatever you like, but I decided to do mine black. It would just look nice contrast against all the bamboo. So we've got that, and you only get enough for the job. So you get 6, and that's all you're going to use, because you're going to use 4 on each sail, and then you've got to tie 2 to the mast, which I'll show you shortly. So every mast and sail has 6 blocks in this kit. So yeah, don't break them, because you'll be trying to hand make one. Now I'll use a block of wax, right? This is basically just beeswax, which I use to run the cordage through to get rid of any furries. And I'm going to use the cordage as supplied in the kit because it's quite good. IMAI cordage is excellent. So just always get the least fluffy cordage you can. And I'm going to use this, which is called a big eye beading needle, because exactly as it says on the box, it is very big. And so threading it and unthreading it's really easy. So all you do to thread it is you open it up nice and wide, right? And because even me with my dead eyes and my fumbly hands, I can get through there, so you can do it too. Pull it to the back, and that's it. You don't knot it, it'll basically hold in place. And it's thin enough. You can get various sizes. This one's quite long. Usually one about half this size is a bit better, but I don't know what happened to all my short ones. I think they sort of fell into the carpet monster. And then away you go. And then when you finish doing all your rigging, right, because that's very firm, won't come loose. When you finish doing your rigging, all you do is pull the cordage back into the loop, and out it comes. Easy as that. And the only other tool that I use is a little trimmer. And this is a snappy little one from U-Star. Okay, just called a model tool trimmer, and it just does the job. Bernard gave me this, and that allows me at the end to go and trim things. And you'll need some glue. I'll use some Selleys white glue, Aqua here, which is what I use all the time doing this sort of stuff, because it dries clear and it's thin. It basically doesn't look blobby at the end. All right, with all those bits and pieces ready to go, let's rig up this sail. I have all my blocks now on the sail, and while the glue is drying, I'm not going to do any of the trimming. You'll wait until that one's pretty well dry because it's clear already. But I'll wait until they're all done. Now, one trick is all your blocks are going to pull down, right? So when you put them on, think of that when you're setting them, and make sure that you also make sure the cordage is at the top of the actual block. So bottom of the yard, top of there, so they all work that way. It'll sort of still work otherwise, but it just looks neater if you actually get it right, and then when they pull with the rigging. Now, you noticed we couldn't put the beading needle through the tiny hole in the top there. That's why I've done those by hand, while you've got plenty of room and it's all on your bench. When you get on the model though, it'll be really hard to actually take the cordage and try and thread it through. It's just, I can't do it. So that's when the beading needle is going to come into its own. And if we thread it up now, so it's a piece of cake to thread up. Right. And if we'll try this one because it's sort of dry. So the bigger hole should take our beading needle, no problem at all. If you do need to loosen it a bit, you can put a drill bit in there and just sort of take out any errant paint that might be in the way. So now that beading needle fits through there, no problems at all. And it should take, with a little bit of pulling. Yep. Never pull on the cordage, always hold the pulley block and then pull your thread through, right? I said string, yeah. So that'll work fine, okay? And if you make a mistake, sometimes you can actually run it back through and take it out. I'm probably pushing things a bit. Yep. So yeah, you go, oops, that was the wrong one. I put it in the wrong thing. You think, oh, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to cut the cord. No, you can actually run it back. This can do so many things and it really saves your life. Now that my gluing is dry, we can cut away. Now be very careful here. Never cut too close to the knot because you might actually cut the bit of the knot off. So always rest your cutter just a little bit away. It doesn't matter that you leave that tiny bit. No one's ever going to see it, and it looks more realistic anyway. So also here on the block itself, right again, run it down, rest, up a little bit, trim, and that's fine. And that way it's not going to all unravel on your model, which is not a good look. All my blocks have dried on their rigging and they're all set there. One thing I've done differently though is I've done these with a lighter colour, and normally I do that little bit with dark colour. It doesn't matter too much, but it sort of is fixed rigging, so it should sort of be dark colour, but really we'll get away with it. But what I do need to get the dark colour is up the top here, this piece, because I've got a block here that has to go around the mast here a couple of times. And there'll be a block there and a block there. You've got to try and work out, well, what should be the size for this? And the only way to really do that is to have a look at how this is going to sit. So the sail has locating points, a wide one here and a narrow one there. So you slide down the wide one until you get to the point where it can't go any further. And then there's the narrow one. So that's basically about the position there. So what we can do now is clamp that in place. And I've got these clamps for wooden ships that have got nice soft little sort of ends on them so they don't damage. Well, they're not supposed to. So again, letting it rest as far down as we can. I can actually get it down to about there, I think. Lower the better. And then I'll just clamp that in place. So that's about where it's going to sit. So there's a little hole here. You can't quite see it at the moment. I'll show you in a sec. Little hole here and the little hole here, which is exactly the same as on these ones. There's a little hole that you actually tie your halyard through, which is basically pretty well a clue line, and that will run up into this block that we're about to attach. So this little block is going to have cordage from there to it, and then it's going to go down. So the block will need to sit about there. So you can sort of calculate out, all right? So if I know the hole's there, I know it's there. That distance, I need half of that for this line. So it needs to be that much. And similarly over here, I need half over here. So it's that much, big fat head in the wind. So that is how much I need. But I'm going to wrap around the mast. So it needs to be a bit longer. How much? Well, it's pretty easy to calculate. So what you need is something to measure it with. And I just happen to have one of these. You could use a rule. So at that point there, I need to know what is my mast. And it is 3.5 millimeters. Okay. So if I wrap around that once, that'll be pi times 3.5, right? And I can use a calculator to work all that out. And so that says I need about 11 millimeters, all right? I want to go around twice. Oh, 22 millimeters. So I need to add 22 millimeters, right? So if I know that it needs to be that long, I'll just need to get my rule out and measure basically another 2 centimeters, and that's where I've got to go to. So now I tie on my other block to that spot and it should all come out in the wash. Well, the good news is the junk did finally get all rigged and everything's on it. Sails, flags, you name it, everything's in place. But this video has already run on for quite a while, and I've got as much footage left there for Bass to edit, which will have to go into next weekend's video. So there'll be a part 2 for the rigging, where I'm going to go through all the lines in detail, how they all fit, because I know a lot of you really wanted to know all the tips and tricks for adding every little bit. That's going to take another video of about 20 minutes. So I hope you'll wait till then. But anyhow, look, if you've enjoyed this one so far, buttons, 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 go on, hit those buttons. And those buttons are tie, glue, and knot. Yes, if you could just hit one of those, something happens. And if you really want to help me out, bang, buy me a curry. Yes, it's a website. Go to it. You can buy me a curry. They're just little donations. It's no contract. All right, we will continue this next time, and I'll finish off the complete junk to this state. So it's worth waiting for. Poor old Basky's going to have her work cut out for her for next week. But oh well. That's why she gets fed the big fish. All right, it's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini. Yes, Bask, you better get back in there editing. Got another video to make.